Hello, my extraordinary X-Men fans. It's Jerry Rasco, and today we are looking at another issue of the X-Men. Still, at this point, we're looking at X-Men number 6. It's still not the Uncanny X-Men. It's still just the X-Men at this point. But we are going to be taking a look at this book, the next issue in the series, and going over the art, talking about what works, what doesn't, the storytelling, the tips, and the tricks that the creative team of Jack Kirby and Chic Stone used to bring this story to life. Of course, I want to let everybody know, if you're new here to the channel, thank you for dropping in and checking this out. We do have a couple of other playlists on the channel that do the same thing, where we review comic book series. And with each of those, I have created a piece of original artwork that is going to be going to subscribers, random subscribers, drawn when we get to 1,000 subscribers. So when we hit that mark, I will draw from the total number of subscribers random folks who will win a free piece of artwork. And these are the ones that we're talking about. So we have the X-Men in their original school uniforms. We have the Amazing Spider-Man. So if you're not familiar with that, this is the first series that I started and has been going on for quite some time. So check that out. We have a playlist on the channel here. You can dive into that. And then we also have the Incredible Hulk, another series, not quite as long as Spider-Man. So, but it does have a few episodes out there. Again, you can find them on the playlist here on the channel, and you can go back and check those out as well. We review every issue, starting at the beginning and working our way forward. And I have more series coming up. So as of the recording of this video, I do not have those series recorded yet, but I have the artwork done. So I want to show you more artwork that you could win just by clicking the subscribe button. To start off with, we have the Fantastic Four, Marvel's first family. You can see here in their original costumes. We're going to be doing a Fantastic Four series, looking at those comics. We have Captain America, so we'll be looking at Captain America books. These don't start with Captain America number 1, to be honest. That's one that we don't have access to, going back to World War II. This is more of the modern Marvel take on Captain America when he returns. And then the last one we have here as well is the Avengers, that original team of Iron Man, Thor, Hulk, Wasp, and Ant-Man. So this original lineup, we're going to be looking at the Avengers, starting with Avengers number 1 in that original lineup. And all of those could be yours just by clicking the subscribe button. There's no purchase necessary. It's completely free. Even the shipping will be free to the winners. So if you haven't, click that subscribe button. We want to get to 1,000 as soon as possible. And then that way we can get that art into all of your hands. So thank you everybody who has been subscribing so far. The support has been amazing, and I absolutely am humbled by all the feedback. So thank you all so much. That said, we've got a comic to look at. Let's jump over and look at X-Men number 6. So this is the copy to X-Men number 6. And ironically, again, at the time of this recording, I'm also working on the next issue or next video featuring the Incredible Hulk, which also features Submariner, sort of. So ironic that we've got it's not the publishing order. Obviously, I'm not going in that correction in that time because I started one series first, but just happens to be times out where we've got a lot of Submariner that I'm working on right now. So that's very interesting. Real quick, I do want to point this out. So with this particular series, we are still dealing with recolored covers. The original cover, very similar in terms of the color tones that are used. However, this was digitally recolored. And again, I'm not sure why in this series, whereas with our other comics, we actually see scan of the original cover. In this particular case, with that recoloring, the black line work has been really bulked up to the point where it almost it's almost distracting. And let me show you exactly what I mean here. If we zoom in a little bit, you'll see what I'm talking about. The Angel. So this is the example. In the original, you can see his eyes. His eyes are wide in shock as Submariner comes flying towards the group. Here, that black ink has been, I guess, recopied or reprinted over the top somehow, and to the point where it's bled over into small areas and it wasn't a big area, but his eyes, and now they're completely blacked out, which they obviously shouldn't be. The line work around Submariner is incredibly thick. I like a bold outline, but this is a lot. And then you start to lose some of the fidelity of the background when these small lines are, again, very thick because of sort of overprinting of the black line. And so, anyway, that's what we're seeing here. Again, I appreciate the fact that if they couldn't have the original cover for some reason, that we did use this digital copy. It's better than having nothing. But of course, I do prefer the original colors so we can see what it was all about. But that's it. It's a good cover. One of the things to note, we have a new costume design, a slight tweak for Marvel Girl, aka Jean Grey. So she did have one of these sort of head cover cowls, much like Angel and Beast, that allowed her hair to come out. Now they've moved to this pointed mask, which I guess is maybe a little reminiscent of Scarlet Witch. I'm not sure. And I don't know if it was just an opportunity to show more of her hair, to really help identify her. No idea why they switched. You can see it in the corner box here, right? It was a cowl that went over the top of her head and her hair came out the bottom. So, again, not sure why the subtle change, but that's a change there. Of the coloring, ironically enough, it does, again, match the original cover, including the miscolors. So, Namor's trunks are red. Typically, Namor wears green trunks, and in the comic, he wears green. And Quicksilver is still being colored in this light blue, which does, again, fit with the original cover, even though inside he's wearing green. So I don't know why he wouldn't just be colored green on the cover. This has been happening now for, I think, at least three issues in a row. So half of the run so far, we've up to issue 6, half of them have miscolored covers. And again, I don't understand why when it's been very consistent on the interiors. So kind of an interesting choice there. It's not the most powerful Namor pose. So it is good. You have your crowd and you have your big, in this case, guest star, who obviously is the, pivot point of the plot here. Is Namor going to join up with Magneto? Is he going to join up with the X-Men? Is he going to join up with neither of them? So the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants are in the background, Namor towards the front, and, not really attacking. But it's sort of, like I said, weak. Yes, he's flying, and in a traditional sort of horizontal flying pose, which is fine. But because of it, you lose a lot of the body. And let's be honest, this is a guy that's wearing little trunks, and they keep talking about it in the book about how powerful he is, how strong he is. And we see it kind of in the arms, but I mean, why not show off all the muscles and have him more more vertical, maybe coming down towards the crowd. There's a lot of different ways we could do it. I don't know that we need this giant magnet in the back. It is part of the plot, but let's be honest, for the cover, selling it is Submariner showing up in the X-Men books, when so far he's been an antagonist, a villain in the Fantastic Four. So anyway, just it's okay. It's a little busy. If at the time, I'm sure if I was a Marvel fan and I saw Submariner here, I'm picking it up because I'm like, it's not Fantastic Four, what's going to happen. So that part is good. Let's go in here. I always talk about it at this stage of the video. This is a scanned PDF copy. I kind of mentioned it with the cover, but basically in 2005, in this case, Marvel got hold of all of these comics and they scanned them all and put them onto DVDs so that you could view them on your computer at home, which is what we're doing here. So it's nice to be able to do that because you see all the original ads, you see the page turns as they are originally plotted out. It's much easier to get a good view of the actual art and line art, and without being like here on the cover bothered by things like the computer coloring and does it work or not work, right? So I love this original approach. So we get it as close to as it was the day it came off the newsstand. Let's talk very quickly about the team here. So we do still have Stan Lee writing. We have Jack Kirby doing the pencils. And this is the first time we've talked about Chic Stone. So he is the inker. Chic Stone, aka Charles Stone, has a pretty interesting history that I'll share with you. So he started out way back, I believe in the 40s, working on Captain Marvel for Fawcett Comics. And when I say Captain Marvel, I mean Shazam. So originally he was called Captain Marvel until there was a lawsuit, and they ended up changing his name to Shazam. But originally he was known as Captain Marvel. So one of the very early superheroes, he worked on that book. He left comics for the better part of a decade in the 50s, where he worked as an art director for a lot of different magazines. Remember, we're talking about a time when things, print was everything. This is how you got your news. Yes, there was TV. Yes, there was radio. But still, things like Time Magazine, Life Magazine, National Geographic Magazine, plus anything in between, magazines were just a huge part of everyday American life. And so Chic Stone worked as an art director for a lot of magazines. Then in the 60s, he came back to Marvel and to comics and primarily just started working for Jack Kirby. There was a little quote that I saw where he was telling the story. I'm not gonna read it exactly. I'm gonna summarize it, but basically he went into the Marvel offices looking for work and saw Stan, and Jack Kirby had just submitted some new pencil pages. In this case, it was a Fantastic Four book, and in fact, I think it was 27. So my notes say that he started with the cover of Fantastic Four 27 and was the inker through issue number 38. Obviously working on the X-Men, and then also worked on Thor in the book called Journey into Mystery, which was Thor's primary book. So in other words, he went in, saw the pages there, went, oh, wow, those are new pages from Jack Kirby. Those look great. And Stan went, yeah, you want to ink it? And he went, sure. And when he turned it in, they would just give him a new job. Okay, I got a new job for you. Here's some new pages. Oh, great. And he just kept working because this was a time when comics were just a mode of business. It was a working man's job or working person's job. It was one of those things where that's how you made a living and you had to produce. And so Chick was inking as much as he could. One of the things I note here, we'll talk about it through the video, but I just kind of want to preface what I'm going to say. So you can see it in this initial splash page, which I think is pretty good. It's a slice of life splash page, which becomes an X-Men trope. We see the X-Men around breakfast, dinner, etc. a lot, as almost as much as kicking off a story with the Danger Room, or the other one, they're playing sports. Sometimes they're playing baseball, football, basketball, stuff like that. So that's another X-Men trope. The first thing that struck me as I look at this is that I would qualify Chic Stone as a soft inker. I'm air quoting soft. What I mean by soft is rounded, organic brush lines. I mean, I'm sure 99% of everything that we're going to see was probably inked. Maybe some of these background elements might have been done with pens, but most everything is going to be done with a brush. And compared to other inkers, so Jack Kirby, when we look at Jack Kirby's pencils, I would argue that Jack Kirby is a very angular artist. He uses a lot of straight lines, square geometric shapes in his figure work, in his backgrounds, in all of his designs. And to give you examples, a couple modern examples that you can kind of compare against, artists like my first thoughts went to Walt Simonson. So when you look at Walt Simonson's Thor issues, his later Fantastic Four issues, he has a very angular way that he draws muscles instead of being super rounded or sometimes sort of squared off in areas. Mike Mignola is another one who has a very angular style of drawing. And then Sal Buscema, another very angular, sharp artist in terms of his pencil lines. So pairing them with what I call a soft inker, someone who is known for soft, rounded, organic shapes. In this case, Chic Stone. Later, like one of my favorite parts, it's only a few pages, I think, of Walt Simonson's Thor run. There's actually some stuff that's inked by, oh gosh, why am I blanking? I'll come back to it. Sorry. I had it on the tip of my tongue and now I lost it. Terry Austin. Terry Austin, all-time great inker's inker, right? But uses a very naturalistic line. So it's some of my favorite Walt Simonson work to be paired. The two together complement each other. And that's what I'm seeing here for the most part with Chic Stone. The soft inker rounds off some of those hard edges and makes things feel a little more naturalistic. And that's what we're getting. So, one last thing about the slice of life here. Obviously doesn't age particularly well that, the men are all sitting around the table to eat and they've given the school cook the day off. So Jean cooks for everybody. I like to think maybe that it's a round robin and everybody takes a turn. But remember, this is 1964, so probably not. Again, understood, that's a long time ago. It's over 60 years ago. So, I mean, it's not going to be the same, right? Obviously. But the other thing here is Iceman has a piece of pie, and he is using his ice powers to make it pie a la mode. And I'm like, that's not how ice cream works. Ice cream is not simply ice. Ice cream is frozen milk, sugar, sometimes eggs, and flavorings. And so if you just put snow on top of something, it's just literally going to taste like frozen water on top of your pie. It is not ice cream. Iceman cannot produce ice cream from his hands. He can make something that looks like ice cream, but it is not actually ice cream. So it's a subtle thing. It's not a big deal. It's just part of the story as an example to show off their power or his powers. Because again, every issue is someone's first issue, and you want to make sure if they pick this up for the first time because they're maybe a Fantastic Four fan and they see Submariner, you've got to introduce everybody to explain kind of what their powers are, right? So Iceman makes ice, not ice cream, but that's okay. Other subtle little thing here, little coloring error maybe. So you see Jean is in like a gold outfit, Jean, at least a gold shirt, something like that. We cut over here and now she's wearing black. And well, so interesting. It's black here. It's black with just the tiniest hint of yellow, like a highlight there. So I don't know, just one of those continuity things that just bugs me. You have the pages to look at. We can all see them and know, okay, if the color guide says she's wearing yellow, then don't make it black, make it yellow. That being said, we're going to keep going in. And like, as I was saying, a more naturalistic or organic line and feel. Like this image of Xavier is a pretty good example. I think with a strict Kirby and somebody who's absolutely inking with, a Kirby line with no variation, they're being extremely true to the pencils, would be a much harder angle. The cheekbones would cut in, those eyebrows maybe even being more dramatic, but we've got some subtle rounder lines in the face the shape, he doesn't have quite as big a head. It's a more normal proportioned head. I know Xavier or Kirby tended to draw his head a little bit bigger. So I feel like some of this line work is definitely Chic Stone bringing that natural feel. Here's a little point that makes me, again, a little frustrated at times. Magneto has gloves. Magneto's has purple gloves. Yes, somebody drew fingernails. So now you have to color it flesh tone. However, we'll see as we get through the rest of the book and we get a closer look at his hands, it's drawn for gloves but colored for hands, which is weird and a mistake, and I don't know why somebody wouldn't have caught that earlier. So what's happening in terms of the story? There's been some conflict recently with Magneto and the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, and now everybody somehow at the exact same time has thought, I bet somebody who could be a real benefit to our side, and in this case Xavier saying maybe a mutant, would be the Submariner. We should all try to recruit him to our side of this fight. So everybody comes to that conclusion at the exact same time out of nowhere, which is weird. And then Magneto's going to do it, of course, his way with force. So he's looking at these weapons, and I was like, man, these are some classic Kirby tech. I've described it before in some of the Hulk videos that we do because there's a lot of tech in those because they're working at an advanced military base. But you've got like combinations of geometric shapes, but placed in an order that feels strange with twisted other shapes around it. There's sort of a asymmetrical balance. It's very seldom that they're completely symmetrical. There's usually like, if you've got a pin on this side, you've got like this one where it's got a cable coming out, or this fin might be a different shape than this other fin on the other side. It's going to have a cable, a dish, things like this. But very, very classic Kirby tech. It's all a bunch of, to be honest, meaningless shapes and lines, but it looks advanced enough that we just buy it, right? It's sci-fi enough that it makes sense. And in the base of the Brotherhood, Mastermind. So you have to remember, Mastermind can create illusions. Again, we're talking about a thing of we need to take an opportunity while we're moving the plot forward to show off people's powers. So we've got the Toad bouncing around. We've got Magneto. He's not using his powers, but he's talking about his technology and what he can do. And Mastermind makes an illusion of Cyclops, which Magneto thinks is the real thing, and uses his gun to blast it and almost kills everybody. We have Quicksilver moving super fast, and then saving his sister. So that's kind of the air. You could have just had Magneto going, hey, I'm going to try to reach out to the Submariner, aka Namor, Prince Namor, and I'm going to try to get him to come to our side. You don't need all this stuff other than just showing off what people can do. Likewise, we don't need necessarily all this banter with Iceman and ice cream and Jean taking the pie away because he's trying to eat it with his hands. You could just have Xavier at the table saying, hey, look, everybody, you cut from here and you put the paper in his hands to this panel. Hey, you know what? That's interesting. I'm reading this story about Submariner. I wonder if he's a mutant like us. Maybe I'm going to find out. And then you've saved yourself real estate for other critical panels, or you could make other panels bigger if you wanted to. Magneto then goes and uses, essentially, has an out-of-body experience. So even though he doesn't have telepathic powers like Xavier does, so Xavier's mind can leave his body, and he can travel and communicate with others that way as it's just his mind, right? The term they end up using is astral form. Doctor Strange can do it. Obviously, telepaths can do it. But apparently, all you have to do is be Magneto and be like super committed to it, and somehow you can complete unbelievable telepathic abilities without having telepathic abilities. This is one of the examples. If we zoom in, what I was talking about with the hands, you can see, unfortunately, yes, there is a fingernail drawn on the thumb, but there is no real line. So this isn't like a cuff. They just stopped the color because nobody, now maybe Jack Kirby drew it, but it wasn't inked. So to me, in my mind, this is supposed to be a glove and be purple, not the hand. So I don't know where the mistake is. Did Chic Stone think he had bare hands and he just inked in the fingernails? Did Jack Kirby draw the fingernails but not the cuffs? It's a very weird combination of why Magneto would have bare hands, but they're not drawn as bare hands. The X-Men, of course, are training. Again, some more powers, right? So we're going to show off everybody's abilities while Xavier goes and looks for the Submariner. However, he senses Magneto, of course, and it could be no other than Magneto because, of course. So Xavier's like, I don't want to have a conflict. I'll leave. And he just leaves the Submariner to Magneto. It seems weird. If you're concerned that the Submariner would be a very powerful mutant ally, don't you think you would try to beat Magneto to the punch or do something to stop him? Instead, he just backs off and he's like, it's fine. I'll let him have the first shot, with the Submariner, and we'll see what happens. Very odd. It is nice underwater scenes, though. We've got fish, we've got rocks, we have sort of swirly shading throughout, and the ghost figures aren't bad. Sometimes you can see lines through them. Sometimes they're drawn a little too solid, like this one here with Magneto's face being solid white, even though we can see through the rest of him. Seems a little odd to me. I get it. It's really hard with the coloring and the printing technology they had at the time to do a basically invisible or see-through figure without it becoming just way too messy to where you can't tell what's what. This is a scene where if you had today's computer coloring, we could really do something with it and it would look really, really good, really cool. This was just the best solution they had, for the limited technology, right? So Magneto shows up. Let me see. Yeah. And Namor is raving about the Fantastic Four again. They have defeated him once before, and he's freaking out in his underwater throne room as the king of Atlantis, and everybody's scurrying away from his anger. Why is there fire underwater? How does that work? And so I did double check. I did my homework to say, wait a minute, is this like inside the building? Like, do the Atlanteans breathe air Yeah, inside their buildings, and then they breathe water outside? Only Namor. So the blue-skinned Atlanteans we see there cannot breathe air. That has been canon in Marvel continuity for ages. If they want to attack the surface, they have to basically do the reverse of scuba. Instead of having tanks of air, they have to bring tanks of water that they breathe through. Only Namor and his cousin, both of whom are hybrids, meaning they're half Atlantean, half human, and that's why his skin is pink instead of blue. They can breathe air. So how is there fire underwater? Yeah, unless it's, I don't know. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Tell me how there's fire underwater. It's a great pose, though. I do like the brooding pose is very good of him sitting and, seems like a real, like, I'll go so far as to say Game of Thrones kind of thing, right? Sitting on this throne with his chin in his hand and his fist clenched, trying to figure out, what am I going to do? This is, I'm mad and I don't know what to do with myself. And so it's a very good broody pose that works very well. Magneto takes advantage of the situation, and he gets this kind of lackey guy like, hey, if you get the Submariner to come to the surface and work with me, he'll be out of the way. You could take over. right? And you could run things. And the guy's like, Xavier and the X-Men have a different approach. They know that Namor, or they know that Magneto is after Namor, and so they're going to go to Magneto before Namor, I guess, before they go back to try to, pitch their sales pitch with Namor. So Charles has a bunch of hints on where Magneto's secret island base is, based on ships being off course due to their compasses and directional equipment not working. They see an island with this, ironically, like, gee, I wonder who lives on this island. It has a giant horseshoe magnet. Who could it be? Magneto, like, you could go a little subtle. And I understand this. We read this visually as magnet. Like, especially if you're older like me, you're like, yeah, that's a magnet. It's a horseshoe magnet. Magnets can literally come in any shape and size. It doesn't have to be this. So he could have a weird device, and they go, I don't know what all this technology on this island is, but the fact that it's literally a magnet is like, come on. And then the last one, I love it. Like, if this doesn't sell you, hey, there was a freighter that got picked up by magnetic forces and put down 50 miles away. Like, okay, well, obviously that's the dead giveaway. So we know where we've got to go. So now the X-Men have cars, they have planes. Apparently they do not have boats, because Charles says he's going to charter a boat and they're going to cruise to this island. And immediately I go, they got a wooden sailing ship, like a 3-mast wooden sailing ship. Like, is it like Pirates of the Caribbean? Like, what is happening? And so at first glance, I was like, oh, well, maybe they were like, let's get a wooden sailing ship because it will limit Magneto's ability to affect the ship, right? If you have a big metal tanker, freighter, whatever ship, if it's made of metal, Magneto could just repel you. You never get to the island. So maybe the wooden ship is that way because of that. They don't say that, and we'll see what happens later, but that was my first thought. Spoiler, I was wrong. Another thing I want to talk about here are tangents. So we talk about them all the time, and hopefully my explanations make sense. You can see them in tons of my videos, but very quickly, a tangent is when you have the outline of two objects in an image that are supposed to be on different planes. So one is closer to you, one is further away from you, but the outlines line up perfectly. And if they do that, you lose the element of overlap, which is one of the things that our brain uses to tell us what's closer, what's further. When they line up perfectly, but one is closer than the other, you start to lose that sense of space. In fact, it is a camera trick. It's called forced perspective. It's a way that they use in a lot of filmmaking to make things look like they're different sizes even when they're not. So a great example I'll give you is the movie in The Lord of the Rings. You have Elijah Wood plays a hobbit. You have Ian McKellen plays Gandalf the Wizard. They're both normal humans, but Elijah Wood's character, Frodo Baggins, is supposed to be much shorter and smaller. So what they do is they move the two apart, but they use that tangent where they have a split in things like a table or chairs or something. But because it lines up perfectly, the camera and our eye can't tell what's supposed to be in front of the other. So it's a way to make one thing look really big and one thing look really small, but it blurs together, looks like they're on the same plane, that they're at the same level, but they're not. And so that's a trick. Unfortunately, you don't want that in comics, because then you get this. You have these seagulls, which is a nice added bit, but the tangents are where it lines up with the side of the sail. this wing kind of fits with the lines of the sailboat and the sails, and to the point where even the colorist didn't realize this right here behind is another sail, and they just ended up coloring it sky color because it's so distracting from the bird. Likewise, it's kind of cutting across the angel, but then you have these other ones that are going up and down, and everything with the seagulls just blurs together into one big mess, and it's very hard to pick out what's supposed to be closer, further, etc. You have to really take your time and look through it, and you don't want that. We want our readers to be able to tell at a glance what is close, what is far, what is larger, smaller, etc. You don't want them to have to stop reading and start digging into just the line work and then go, okay, let me get back to the story. You want it to be seamless and invisible. Again, more examples of powers, right? So they have a camera that they're using to try to, I guess, look ahead for this island. So that it's instead of somebody in the crow's nest, they've mounted a camera. Beast goes to get it. The rope breaks, and you've got, so we're showing his agility. We're showing Jean's telekinetic power where she's trying to catch him, and Iceman adding some snow to cushion the fall. And of course, Angel flying around reconnaissance. So you've got, again, we're showing you the powers. We're reinforcing what they can do. Is this whole thing necessary? No, we could trim this from the story a little bit, and it would be perfectly fine. So here we go. That wormy little guy has gotten Namor's attention, and he's like, you should go see this Magneto guy. I'm telling you. And this is, if I'm not mistaken, now we haven't done our Fantastic Four series yet. So, I may find myself that I correct myself, but I don't think so based on the dialogue here. I think this is the first time that they mention that Namor is a mutant, just like the X-Men. So, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of the history, Namor is half Atlantean, half human. That's what gives him his pink skin, but that isn't what makes him a mutant. What makes him a mutant are the little wings on his feet that allow him to fly. And you can get into it. I have here, I've mentioned it before, I have the official handbook of the Marvel Universe. It goes into the fact that the wings themselves aren't really like Angel's wings. They're not what's pushing him through the air. They're obviously too small for that, but it's a manifestation of some sort of basically a flying superpower that he has. But that's what essentially makes him a mutant, as opposed to just a hybrid between Atlanteans and humans. I do like the side eye here, of that guy with the crown, the king, who's like, maybe, right? Like taking what this guy's told him, like, you should really go, and kind of turning it into his own idea. That's a great face there. I like that quite a bit. So he arrives on Magneto's island, and of course Magneto, rather than like making him the pitch of, hey, you're a mutant, we're mutants, people hate us, the surface hates you, they hate us too, we should get together and work together. Instead, he's just going to be underhanded about it. So he's going to try to use the Scarlet Witch's beauty to kind of enamor enamor the Submariner to her and get her to manipulate him that way. So, you go not a great plan, obviously, but so be it. Let's see. Okay, we've got a pretty good standard superhero pose there. Namor moving around looks pretty good. Anatomy is good. Everybody seems very impressed with him. Nothing super fancy. Obviously, he's interested in the technology and all the magnetic machinery that Magneto has on the island. And of course, again, as I mentioned, we've got some this is a small example, but this is some classic Kirby technology. There's a random box with 3 dots, a weird pipe that goes up and bends for no reason. This thing's at this weird angle. There's a circle behind it. It's a bunch of strange shapes and forms together, but it works for the purposes of what we need it. So things aren't going great. Namor almost gets electrocuted because Wanda accidentally uses her power, her hex power, to cause bad luck, basically. But he's so strong it doesn't bother him, and everybody's like, "Wow, that's amazing! That's so cool!" Whatever. And all of a sudden, boom! Here comes the Angel and kind of knocks everybody away. I find this panel, I don't have a problem with the Angel swooping in, but I find it a little odd. And what I mean by that is the Mastermind. So he swings in, Angel flies in, and it looks like he strikes. Now, Toad jumps up, so it looks like maybe he hits Mastermind and knocks him down. But basically, if you took this figure and just turned it 90 degrees to where he was standing, it looks like a standing figure. He doesn't look like a figure that's been knocked flat. He's not reaching forward to brace himself. His legs aren't really moving in the air. They're set as if the weight is on them. So it's a very stiff or strange angle of Mastermind through this. It doesn't really reflect to me that Angel came in and hit him. Also, this Angel is pretty much in profile, which honestly kind of does a disservice to the wings, because you really only see the one that's closest. We see just the tips of the one that's further away. A more powerful image would have been if he had been maybe 3/4. You would have had his wings spreading across, so as he swooped in and swooped up away, we'd see his face, we'd see the wings spread out. It would be a stronger pose than this. Obviously, this works for the story, and hindsight is 2020. But that's just my 2 cents on where that pose could be a little stronger. Magneto then begins to lift rocks and fling them at the Angel. So you go, wait a minute. Let's talk for half a second about magnetism. And this is going to come into play here in the next page as well. Magnetism obviously is a force. I think everybody's familiar with magnets, but the key to remember is that not all things are affected by magnets. Okay? If I have a piece of paper and I put a magnet on it, it doesn't do anything. I can't float this with a magnet. I can't stick a magnet to it and carry it around. It's not going to work that way. It has to be something that has ferrous metals, and not all metals are ferrous. So things like gold, for example. Magneto would be powerless against gold because you can't stick a magnet to gold. I had a stainless steel refrigerator one time, and you couldn't put your kids' artwork on the front because magnets won't stick to stainless steel. They'll stick to regular steel because regular steel has iron in it. And that's the key. Magnets work with iron. Now, magnets can work in conjunction with each other to create fields, sometimes electrical fields. They can repel each other. But then what you're talking about is Magneto's not lifting the rock. He's creating 2 different magnetic fields, a positive and a negative, underneath the rock. And those magnetic fields are pushing against each other to lift the rock up. But then he wouldn't be able to control it. It's very hit or miss. Sometimes Magneto, his powers tend to be more like the master of metal than it is magnetism. Because again, like I said, there's tons and tons of metal that are not ferrous, that will not interact with magnets. So now here's my, so there's a thing, if you're not familiar, if you're not an old school Marvel fan, there's a thing that's called a no prize. And what they would do is people would start writing letters, fan letters, into the comics pointing out mistakes. And it got to the point where Stan and team would say, if you find a problem and you provide us with the solution and we like your solution, you will win a no prize. Which is exactly what it said. It is a no prize. You win no prize for pointing it out. But people were like, oh, I want my no prize. And I think eventually they did end up shipping they would like mail a letter back to somebody with, you know, his piece of paper. It's just like, here's your no prize, and it's just a piece of paper. So I always thought that was very funny how later everybody got very interested in, like, could I pick apart this? Could I find it? Could I get a no prize? Which is just that, it's a no prize. Here's my no prize solution. This is Magneto's secret base. This is his island. He has imbued or laced everything on this island with metal, with iron, whether that's iron filings, iron veins through the rock, whatever it takes. He has done that so that everything on the island can be a weapon for him, whether it's a rock, a tree, a grass, whatever. It's got some form of iron in it for him to control, because if anybody would do that, it's Magneto, who obviously is a super control freak, right? So there's my no prize solution for why Magneto can suddenly cast stones that are not necessarily ferrous metal. Some Mariner's like, oh, I got this. That's cool, but let me show you what I can do, because he can fly. So he flies up, grabs Angel, and flings him off. Not bad. Interesting. I like the start of like this pitching pose where he's grabbed the Angel by his arms, and he's getting ready to fling him. Even though he's not bracing himself against the ground, he's so strong he can just fling him even while he's in the air. The team sees Angel coming, grabs him, Beast grabs him, Iceman makes a slide, everybody is safe and happy. However, obviously, they may be too late. This is Submariner's there. He's with Magneto, and so they've got to strike fast to see if they can break up this little family, this new friendship. In talking, like I mentioned at the very beginning, with Chic Stone's line work, this Xavier here, to me, feels a little more angular than what we saw at the beginning. And I'm going to go back just so we can compare side by side. So what I mean by that is the cheekbones are a little more dramatic, a little more sunken in, maybe. This line under the chin is a very classic Kirby kind of angle shading thing that he would do. The line work just feels like the jaw feels exceptionally squared off, very angular instead of round. Whereas over here, this profile face feels very round. This feels much more natural, rounded, organic shapes. But let's cut back to the earlier one just very quickly, and I'll show you what I'm saying. So to me, this face down here, it's subtle, but it feels a little softer. The jaw is still fairly angular, especially on this side. This side's a little more round here. I like this. The cheekbones are a little rounder as opposed to squared in. We don't have that chin shadow there. Just a few little things make it, again, feel to me a little. It's very subtle, but they feel less angular than what we're seeing right here, right? So here's where Magneto's giant magnet comes into play. He fires this thing up. Apparently this is a giant weapon that sends a magnetic blast out at the X-Men and destroys their ship. So here we go. Magnetic blast destroys wood. Again, we just talked about how magnets work. Again, and so I told you my original theory was maybe they take an old wooden sailing ship to minimize the impact that Magneto's powers would have. Apparently that's useless, because this thing is some sort of magnetic blast that can do anything and everything that they need it to do, which seems kind of crazy. Quick thinking by Iceman, making a ice bridge. Very nice. Obviously, it doesn't work if you think about it in terms of like it's a floating pathway, right? Because it would either... Ice does float. Obviously, we know icebergs float, but it wouldn't float like this. You have to displace a lot of water. If you're familiar, obviously, with the Titanic and icebergs, majority of your iceberg is under the water. It's just that tip that shows out of the water because it's displacing water. That's how it floats. Plus, it's less dense. So ice can float. That part could work, but what I'm assuming is he's just making a deep pillars underneath to support it all the way down to the ocean floor. No reason he can't. Making ice is making ice, and he's got plenty of water to work with. So, good thinking there. I like this. It's a little weird. Xavier obviously is paralyzed. He's in his wheelchair. He would sink if he was underwater, so Beast is holding him up. Somehow he's also talking while he's underwater, and he's treading water without having to breathe, which seems odd to me. But I like the bubbles, the foam, the splashes. The overall water treatment is very, very nice. Water can be really hard to do, and they've done a really good job here of making it feel like the Beast is really in the water. They head to the island where they are talking about this. It looks like there's this giant thorn plant, and Magneto's like, nope, this is just another illusion. This is one of Mastermind's illusions. You can walk right through it. Now, one of the things I mentioned in my notes here, so here and kind of in this panel as well, and a few others, we're starting to lose some of the shadows. Some of the cast shadows, some of the core shadows, right? We see it even in small panels like this. You've got this shadow underneath the back of the Beast's head. As they're bending their legs, their knees and their thigh and their knee is blocking the sun. So their shins are dark. This leg is back. His body's shading it. It's dark. We're seeing those on the rocks. There's some shadows. Even here, we still have them here on the figures, but we don't have it on this plant. And if we're to buy the fact that the team feels like these are really real, they should be shaded until you get to this point where they just walk through the illusion. This panel here as well kind of felt the same. Yes, there is this shadow on Cyclops' arm, but there was something especially about Xavier. There's no shadow on him whatsoever. So he looks very flat. He almost looks like an illusion. There should be shading definitely under, if Cyclops has shading under his arm, Xavier should have shading underneath this arm that's lifted and pointed, maybe along the side here, under his chin to his neck, probably on the front side. His legs are bent forward in a wheelchair, so maybe there. If not, definitely around the underside of the arms where his body is sitting in the chair. So it just felt kind of thin from a shading perspective or a rendering perspective. And again, these are things that happen as you're working through a deadline, trying to get stuff inked in time for press. Sometimes you have to go quick and make business decisions on what you're going to do and what you're going to leave out. Where was it? Oh, yes. So I found a lettering error. Typically, I don't notice these, or they don't exist. So I haven't really called them out in our series so far, but it just, for whatever happened. And this is one of the things I've said before about letterers. Certainly valuable team members for sure. You don't have a story without letterers. There's no dialogue to read. There's no narration to read. You'd have to just guess at what's happening and what people are saying. So very important part of the team and underappreciated. And what happens with letterers, in my experience, is if they do a good job, you don't notice them. You just take it for granted that that's the narration box and this is the font that they're using. And remember, this is a time again when everything was being done by hand. These letters are all done by hand. So to have consistency so that every E, every A, every S, every letter looks the same from bubble to bubble, that's a real talent. However, here, Cyclops says he seems to hear something, and it's spelled SEAM, like the seam between two objects, or the seam of a shirt, or the seam of your pants, versus seam, SEEM, meaning I think I hear something. So, yeah, very rare to see one of those lettering errors. Quicksilver gets involved and is very quickly defeated by the X-Men. And this is where the X-Men are at their best, when they are working together as a team to combine their powers. We've seen Angel shows up on his own, and he's very quickly, defeated by Namor. We see Cyclops shows up. He's like, I'm going to destroy this machine by myself. And Quicksilver he doesn't get the best of him, but he definitely stops him until Jean comes and uses her powers in conjunction with Scott's distraction, and then dropping him into Beast's arms. When the team is working together, that is by far when they are at their best. Again, here's another example. This is, to me, a perfect example of the whole Magneto glove thing. So you can see there's wrinkles, like this is all part of the same material. Even though they've drawn that thumbnail in there, it really doesn't feel like any of these lines are true, like a cuff, and they just cut the coloring off. So that does bug me a little bit, to be honest. And then Magneto, in his arrogance, of course, is not going to put up with Scarlet Witch trying to tell him what to do, or that he will sacrifice Quicksilver or anybody he wants to reach his own goals. And Submariner's not having it. As much as he is his own kind of jerk, he does appreciate the ladies, and it is like, nope, that's not how you treat a lady. And so Magneto's like, fine, everybody's against me, I'll fight you too. And he goes after Submariner, surrounding him with metal to try to not encompass him, but encapsulate him within metal fragments. But the X-Men aren't done. They keep coming. And then we have, again, the Mastermind using his illusions. And this is actually, to me, makes sense. He creates the illusion of smoke or fog. Perfect. That actually makes sense, that it would obscure their, the X-Men's vision as the bad guys are retreating and running away. That's a great use of the illusion. However, I do want to point out, other than just this little shadow under his arm, again, we're very thin on those core shadows or cast shadows. He should have shadows on the floor underneath him. That would help plant him on that floor instead of just sort of floating over this orange tile design, whatever you want to call it. The cape that he has overlaps itself a lot, so having shadows within that and on the suit underneath would definitely add to make him feel more 3D and not quite just a flat, almost like a coloring book drawing, right? And that's not what we're looking for. The X-Men continue to fight. The Brotherhood is going to escape. They leave Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch behind, so now it's just Mastermind, Toad, and Magneto, and they take off. But of course, there's still some fighting. This is something I didn't quite get from the story, so I'm not 100% sure what is happening here. We see Beast is confronting Namor, because Namor is standing up for Scarlet Witch. Scarlet Witch wants her brother Quicksilver released. X-Men are like, nope. And so Namor is taking her side. So Beast charges in. He takes a swing and punches Namor. Namor is taking a swing at something else over here that's zipping by, but I can't tell what it is. It's not the Beast, I don't think, because the Beast is on the other side of him. So unless these lines were supposed to connect to show like the Beast moved so fast that he did like a U-turn and came in on the other side, which seems odd. I don't know why he wouldn't just jump over him. Is it supposed to be Cyclops' optic blast blasting by? I don't know. It doesn't make sense, and I don't understand what it is. So I'm just going to assume that Namor took a wild swing and missed. But obviously he was throwing a right cross at something that isn't there, but it doesn't make sense that it's the Beast. So I don't know what's going on. The pinup. This is pretty rough. I like the fact that they included the pinup of Cyclops. It's pretty cool. However, here's some things that I have issues with. Number one, let's talk about the visor. So the face is essentially in a profile. We see the jawline over here. We see the lips, the nose. So realistically, the visor, we should only be seeing the edge of it and the beam coming out from there. But they've tried to make the visor 3/4. So if you were really drawing his face, his visor would be like half off his face like this. Like it would be like he's looking this way and his visor's kind of over here like this, and he's blasting out the side of it. It doesn't follow the face. You would need to turn, and the nose would be coming out of the center, and you would see a little bit. It'd be very subtle. You'd see a little bit of that cheek on the other side, and instead of a profile of the mouth, you'd see just a touch on the other side of his, would be the left side. So you'd see the center point, the chin would be out a little more. If you wanted to do it that 3/4. So that's kind of a mixed view there. The other thing that's a little weird, this shoulder anatomy's doesn't make sense to me. So you've got a bicep here, which is fine. It's a little bubbly, but it's okay. And then yes, your bicep goes up and connects. Your shoulder kind of wraps over around the outside of it, and you have sort of 3 muscles that make up your shoulder. There's one in the front, one in the middle, one in the back. And then that all connects to your pectoral muscle. So what you would have, this wrinkle over here makes a lot more sense. You should have that kind of over here as well. This shoulder should be much wider. It wouldn't have this sort of, this shadow indicates that something is sticking out towards us and catching the light above, and then something is catching the light below, but there's no muscle right here. It's sort of here, under here, but right in the center doesn't make sense. Then this arm, so it's fine. You got your shoulder, your bicep, your forearm comes down, your wrist would be here. So this section of stuff right in here in the hand where it bends is extra wrist that doesn't exist. This hand should be, so you would chop that out. Again, you could do it in Photoshop today. Select the hand and just move it back that far to where the wrist would be. Otherwise, his forearm is way, way, way too long. This one over here isn't quite as bad. It might be a little long, but this one is, to me, is egregious. And then, yes, I understand this leg is coming towards us and it's bent, so it might seem thicker. But this leg now seems very, very thin. So it doesn't really match. And here's the thing. A leg coming towards you, especially if it's a muscular leg, we're talking about superheroes here. The leg coming towards you would kind of bow out like this, but you're seeing the top portion of that thigh. If you turn it sideways, your leg is going to appear much thicker from top to bottom than from side to side. Especially if you have a well-developed hamstring, well-developed quad, you need some extra muscle down in here, or you've got to thin this leg out to match. So that's a few things there that just didn't work for me. Last thing I'll talk about is this rendering on the mask. So if his beam is, it's just, there's very mixed light sources. The shadow on the mask around his eyes would indicate that light's coming from behind. But you have these hatch marks here that would indicate, no, it's a shadow. So not as dark as the dark, but a shadow. So where is the light coming from? Is the light coming from straight down? Okay, if the light's coming from straight down, the top of his head is lit. The front of his head is in shadow. Under his neck is shadow. And you want to do this, well, this should probably start lower and just be at the back of his head where it starts to curve away from the light underneath. There would still be light hitting this area right in here. So that doesn't really, again, make a lot of sense. The arm makes sense for top-down lighting. I guess, so these lines threw me off. I suppose this is the cast shadow from his arm. but it's just, again, not very clear. And if you have the light coming from completely above, then why isn't underneath the hand, the palm shaded? Because his hand, the top of his hand is hitting the light, the bottom of his hand would be shaded. The underneath of this leg, yes, there is a dark shadow here. It would be much more pronounced because the light is being blocked by the top of his thigh. There's just a lot of inconsistencies there. So that's a pretty rough pinup. Let's see. So Beast is continuing to attack. I do really like this. This is great. This is a great power pose. He's got his fists on his hips, chest out. You see it's almost like this backwards curve of the shins, like his knees are locked. So you've got the thighs and the knees, and then actually kind of set back is that shin. That's a really nice touch there. And the way the Beast is just bouncing off, and then he starts, throwing punches, and Namor just stands there and just takes them. Great stuff. That part is really, really good. Angel's wings are tiny. Again, I've talked about it in this series so far. The style of many small panels does a great disservice to Angel. He should have massive wings, and they could be a great design element. You can design pages and compositions around them, but we don't. Instead, we see him squeezed into a 3x5 square, which is, kind of disappointing. Cyclops looks like he has him on the ropes, but Scarlet Witch steps in at the last minute. Good attempt at some dramatic lighting with Namor getting hit by the optic blast, but again, hard to pull off with very small lines. The black shadows start to bleed together with the contour lines you're trying to do, and it just looks like this weird fright mask. It doesn't necessarily look like Namor. I like the attempt at it. I just don't think it succeeded all that well. And then everything comes to a head, and cooler heads prevail as Xavier brings Quicksilver out, even though he's under his mental control, so he can't start any problems. But hey, no problem. Here he is. He's good. He's not hurt. Don't worry about it. I do like this. This is some very nice color shading that we don't see a lot of. Usually the colors are all very flat, right? If you have a skin tone or the blue of the costume, it's that one tone throughout the whole thing, the yellow of the costumes. But Xavier's green shirt, you could tell there's light coming in from one side and it's a little more shaded on the other. And I think that really looks good. It's a subtle thing that's, again, very hard to do with the printing technology of the time, but they did a really nice job there. Submariner, once he gets himself riled up, he wants to keep fighting. But again, Xavier is there. Cooler heads prevail. And Namor gives up, and he's like, fine, I'm going to go home. I'll conquer the surface myself. That's fine. And Xavier's like, hey, don't worry about it. As long as he's not with Magneto, we're good. Magneto, of course, himself is like, nope, I'm not going to take no for an answer. If I can't have Submariner on my side, I'm going to destroy him. So he again uses his giant magnet weapon. More great Kirby tech there is very good. And this magnetic force is pushing Submariner, like trying to bury him against the ground and crush him. But he's so strong, he can punch against the earth and destroy the machine. And then take off and go home. Again, I question, how does the magnetic field work? Human beings, we can go into huge magnetic chambers. They are called MRI machines. It's magnetic resonance imaging. They're humongous giant magnets, and we lay in there. And as long as you don't have metal in your body, it's fine. It just takes pictures of you. So I don't know why a magnet would crush him to the ground when Namor himself is not particularly magnetic or ferrous. So now if this is like Colossus or Wolverine who are metal in their body or body made of metal, no problem. Great. Makes perfect sense. Namor, not so much. Magneto decides he's going to turn tail. He grabs his team, and even Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch go back to join him again, even though he abandoned them, and off they go. And now the X-Men are going to take a boat that Magneto left, which appears to be another sailing ship. So it's a multi-mast wooden sailing ship in 1964, whatever I said it was. We don't have motorboats. We don't have engines. What is happening? These guys want to take like 3 weeks to get home. Okay. Little weird, but so be it. And there is the end of the issue. So, after all that, we're going to cut back over to the desk and we're going to wrap things up. So that is X-Men number 6. There, obviously, I kind of pulled it apart a lot. I do want to be very clear. I think I did like a lot of what Chic Stone was bringing to the table as an inker, and that combination with Kirby, I think, was stronger than what we'd seen previously with Paul Reinman. That was the previous inker from issues 1 through 5. I think this combo, again, it's bringing out the best in both of them. It's softening Kirby's lines a little bit, bringing a little more organic feel. But Kirby obviously is still bringing all that energy and that sci-fi fantasy and the unique things that he brought to the table. So I like that partnership, even though I had some problems with a few things. The story itself is very hokey. We know through the episodes of Spider-Man that we did, especially early on, Stan Lee definitely wanted to have a universe. He wanted these heroes to interact with each other, which is why it happened, why the Human Torch shows up in Spider-Man a lot. We've had the Avengers, or at least Captain America, been referenced or shown up as sort of a cameo in the Hulk. And now we have Submariner showing up with the X-Men. So that crossover between the characters and books is obviously something that Stan really liked and pushed for. It feels like that's kind of the only reason for this story. We had just finished a big story where he went from being on an island to being in an asteroid in space. Part of the asteroid got blown apart, and now he's back to where he was. So I guess we'll see when Asteroid M shows up again. Again, it just sort of feels like we don't know what to do. Let's do a story with Submariner. People like him in Fantastic Four. He's got fans. Let's throw him in the book and let's see what happens. Overall, from a rating, I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. Right down the middle. I don't hate it. I don't love it. It's perfectly fine if you skip this issue and never knew that Magneto failed to enlist the Submariner as part of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. You're not missing much. Spoilers, much further down the line, decades down the line, in fact, Namor eventually does end up joining up with the X-Men and kind of embracing his status as a mutant. It doesn't last too long, but it does happen. And we'll hopefully see that down the road in this series. So there we go. That's it. I hope you enjoyed taking a look at this old issue of X-Men. Probably one you may not have seen before unless you are a diehard fan. Of course, don't forget to subscribe. As we mentioned, we've got lots of art that's going to be given away as soon as we get to that 1,000 subscribers. So only you can help us get there that much faster. So thank you for that. And don't forget to hit like, hit the notification button so you know when we come back here next week, same time, with even more X-Men. Thanks.